We adjourn to open meeting at 7:10, or what is it, 7:09?
7:11, 12.
Whatever,
Oh,
7:10.
Well, I don't know which clock to do here, but, so we came from a closed session, and our reportable item is,
Pledge of allegiance, roll call. Michelle's got it all worked out.
okay, so, roll call?
Director Ivinson.
Here.
Director Solano.
Here.
Director Carpenter.
Present.
Director Crawley. Present. Director Bernstein.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, pledge allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pleased to see you. So now we'll do the report from our closed session. Board gave direction to staff on negotiation terms and condition of real property matters discussed. You have it?
I'll get it.
Okay. So we have public comment number 2. We have one speaker, Jim Lewis.
President Solano and members of the board. My name is Jim Lewis, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Yesterday, I noticed in the Palo Alto Daily Post newspaper a front-page article about the issue of government agencies being open or closed on Fridays. A copy of the paper has been submitted to each of you at your desk. That prompted the question of what the pros and cons may be, the benefits and the drawbacks of that policy. And it occurred to me with the fire district, that this policy has been on the books a very long time, and anything that's been on the books for a considerable period of time is probably worthy of being reviewed periodically to see if it's still relevant. If it started 20 years ago, weighing the benefits and the advantages and disadvantages, obviously concluded that it was the proper thing to do. The question is it's still the proper thing to do today. And thus, I ask you to consider, if you feel it's appropriate, sometime this year, to place this item on your agenda and take a look at it in a little more depth, evaluate whether it should be continued or modified in some way. By way of example, Menlo Park is closed every other Friday as opposed to every Friday. I also called 2 other local government cities and was told they're open Monday through Fridays. And I didn't ask why, and I didn't ask for a staff report, but for whatever reason, Monday through Friday seems to work for them. I think the key for me to think about is the rest of the world tends to operate on a Monday through Friday basis. If you look at the businesses, by way of example, in Santa Cruz Avenue, I don't know if anybody's closed on Fridays. The banks, the realtors, the retail stores, and so forth. I think if we look at the corporate sector, they, to be competitive, no doubt are open Monday through Friday, maybe even half-time Saturday. So in any event, it just seemed like a topic that is relevant, current, contemporary, and if you feel the same way, I'd like to request at your convenience to put it on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Yes.
I'm not going to comment on it, but I wanted to ask the chief a question. Is that a matter that is set in terms of the SEIU contract, for example, the workdays, or is that something that is open for discussion?
So there's, to your point, are there hours of work in both the AFSCME and IAFF
I didn't
contract?
mean SEIU, I meant
Yeah,
ASME.
but it's both. So the answer is yes, there's hours of work, days of week for work in both those labor agreements. Thank you.
Okay. Our next item is Middle Park Firefighters Benevolent Activities Report.
Chris Denenbaum, Menlo Park Firefighters Association. I'd like to thank the members of the board, Chief Schapelhammond, all the members of our admin, and the assembled public for this chance to present our benevolent report. We've had 2 events in the past month to report on. The first event was on March 19th. We again brought a team to the Fight for Air stair climb in San Francisco, 555 California, 52 floors, benefiting the American Lung Association, and I'm happy to report that we once again crushed it. So here's the list of accomplishments for this year. Fastest team for the 7th straight time. Fastest firefighting team for the 2nd straight year. Fastest individual climber, Eric McGlennon, absolutely blew everyone on the field away, including me. So my rating title was quickly snatched from me, but we also took home the fastest individual climber in 3 separate age divisions. Most importantly, we obviously value it as a race and a competition, but most importantly, we really raised over $14,000 for the American Lung Association, which was the 4th most by any team, many of which were much larger. There was 50-person teams out there that we were competing with on the fundraising side. Mike Lemos was our MVP in that regard. He personally raised over $12,000 for the American Lung Association, so that was great. That was more than double the next individual fundraiser. So it was a great event for a great charity, and we're happy to be associated with that event every year. Next, we had the Easter egg hunt, which was March 26th, which was a great partnership with the City of Menlo Park, the Fire District. We had great weather, great turnout, very large attendance. We gave out candy to over 1,200 children. It was awesome to see many of you present there. We love that event. It's very important to us. So thank you to the district for supporting the event with on-duty crews and personnel. We really appreciate that. Thank you. The last thing we have upcoming is Rebuilding Together. So this year's National Rebuilding Together Day is April 30th in East Palo Alto. Is the house that we're sponsoring together with the Kiwanis Club. So we have 2 work days coming up. April 26th is going to be a work day, and then National Rebuilding Together Day is April 30th. So we're inviting everyone to stop by, grab a paintbrush, help out if you can. We'll have a barbecue that the association is sponsoring for members of the community and for volunteers that day. The house is at 1224 Sevier Street. And if you need any information, please contact either of our DVPs. That would be great. Or feel free to contact me if you need any information too. Jeff Hendricks leads that up as well with Scott Hilton. So thank you very much for your support, and thank you for letting us give this report.
I must say I'm just absolutely blown away by how well you guys did in that contest. Why hasn't there been? I was not aware of the outcome. Was there any publicity about this? Did I just miss it? Was I out of town? I probably was out of town.
It's an association event, so it's not a district event.
Well, I understand that, but we have very good relationships with the press. I think as a member of this community, people would take a lot of pride in how well you folks did, and I would encourage us to think about ways of making sure the community is aware of that superb accomplishment.
Yeah, thank you, Director. We really appreciate that. So I think we probably don't do as good a job sometimes in patting ourselves in the back as we could, but I think we're not wired that way in some ways. But
just ask the chief how to deal with the press.
Thank you very much.
As Chris just said, I mean, it's really up, if they wanted it done, we do it, but to date, no one's ever really wanted it publicized.
Well, it could help.
But it's actually amazing.
I wouldn't wait till next year. I'd find a way to get these accomplishments of this year, and put it out there to, the wonderful contacts you've got, let them know, connect them with the people who participated. It's a great credit to our community that we field a group of people who are high performers. If those same people came from our high schools or our grade schools, we'd be out there, cheering about what a great accomplishment it was.
And it could help possibly raise more money,
Yeah, it's a good point.
right? I mean, that really, that can, I think, is get momentum going, that, they're gonna do great things and they're gonna keep winning. And who doesn't want to support a winning team, right?
Thank you.
I'll wait for their cue.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
It's on Facebook.
It's
I've
on
seen it
Facebook, yeah. So
yeah.
we put it out on Facebook and we do it on our social media. And I'm not sure that it made it to our website, but we try to do all this stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next, we have the report from the chief, discussion and direction.
Directors, you have my report. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but, you know, pretty standard information this month.
Okay. Chuck, you have anything for the chief and his report?
Well, I wanted to, I did have a question about the response to your question about where most of the incidents occurred and so forth. What was interesting is that over half of the top 15 were for either public agencies or nonprofit, groups, people that pay no tax, essentially. But I was just surprised by the number there, and I don't know if that's something that is correctable, if these are false alarms, if, is what's causing all that? And I assume Rob had a reason for asking those questions, but it was a good question, and it made me say, I can understand the VA hospital, why we might go out there so many times, but for example, the bus and train station, why do we go out there so many? And I don't need
Homeless
this.
there.
Pardon me?
Homeless.
It's because of the homeless? Well, since we're spending a lot of money going there, it just seemed like maybe we could adjust policies or do something, or ask the city to do something, or maybe there's something that could help reduce the number of calls to these agencies. Just an observation. It's interesting data. Now that we have the data, what do you do with it? What does it mean?
Well, the good news, with VA is the number of calls are going down. And the reason for that is because they moved, you'd be surprised, it's not been for the vets, it's been for the county clinic on site. So, and, which was a little disconcerting because the county was paying no tax, residing in a federal facility. So, it was even more egregious. And I've actually had discussions with the VA before about that. We were in the hundreds of calls. We used to go there 1.1 times a day, if you average it. So this is down significantly. And if you look at Facebook, which has gone up, you gotta remember they have now 8,000 employees. So, a lot of trips, slips, falls, kid stuff down there that happens.
The Slack had the third highest number, and they're paying us to respond to
Correct.
these. I guess I'm trying to remember, is that because it's in Santa Clara County, or why
San
is,
Mateo County.
why does Slack have to pay us anything?
Because when they worked out the contract agreement, they are on a leasehold with Stanford, which is so old that the property tax doesn't begin to even pay for services from this district. So LAFCO actually recommended they pay us a negotiated contract amount, which was 1/10 of what they paid before. So the federal government's pretty happy.
I'd like to follow up with what Chuck is saying about the calls for service. A lot of East Coast cities actually, their fire agencies, their EMS agencies charge particular facilities and even the public for calls for service. Like in the state of Florida, they do. So I think it's $175 a call every time.
There are ways for us to recover on EMS, car accidents and so forth.
I'm not making that as a
we've
recommendation, but
not
that's,
chosen to do that. So.
that's what some agencies do back in other areas.
Right, mostly volunteer though, a lot of us too, right?
Kind of regular, they're regular fire.
So, and just to, I'm not gonna say defense of Slack, but Slack's actual call volume is half of what was anticipated. It's been dropping. They do a very good job. We've worked with them on teaching the security staff how to become EMTs and keeping those certifications up. The false alarms have dropped, especially with the new construction up there. So Slack's actually an entity that's doing a really, really good job with trying to manage call volume.
We've lowered the price to them as a result.
No, we kept the price the same. Never lowered. In fact, there's some incentives for us too, like with the brush patrol or unit that we're purchasing that will get actually more money.
Yeah, these family health care facilities that usually have the elderly in them,
Yeah,
I can
there's-
see where there's quite a few calls for service.
Is that what it is, the elderly?
Yeah, like Craig
Well,
Place Senior Health.
Yeah, so let me just address that real quickly. And that is a problem. It's how they access the EMS system, it's the tiering in the county. You know, we tend to, even though we have 340 E&D codes, we try and trend the calls, but on the trending and the way the county handles the call, everything's a code 3 until they determine it's not. And many times, you know, fire is first in, even when physicians are on scene, nursing staff is on scene. So in some cases, these are inter-facility transfers. In other cases, these are, if they have a nursing staff on site, what's the level of training and competency? I mean, there are issues with care facilities like that, especially when they're frequent flyers. Or it could be a singular individual that calls over and over again.
Because out of the top, what, 15, 3 are those long-term facilities, right?
Yeah, but yeah, again, these are many times people are in need as well, so.
Of course.
You know, we don't really, A, discriminate, but B, try to differentiate sometimes.
No, thank you for providing.
No, I think it's a good, you know, I think it's a good eye opener for the board as well.
Is Safeway also because of the homeless?
Safeway has a homeless population that does hang around the store, but people also have accidents in the store. People leave their kids in cars. I mean, you know, you break into them from time to time. I mean, there's a variety of reasons there. Mostly when you see the bus stops, the grocery stores, yeah, there's an element of homeless issues that occur there.
And what about Menlo College?
Those are students. A lot of those can be false alarms. Those have gone down over the years because what we do now is we completely clear the dormitories when they have an alarm sound. That kind of cuts down on the novelty of pulling the alarm. When there's no alarm, it shouldn't be pulled.
In Menlo Atherton High School.
Medical calls, kids not feeling well, it has to do with, you know, the competency of the nursing staff that's there. If they feel they need to upgrade the call. You know, it could be a policy issue, but a lot of times sports, right, kid breaking a leg on the football field, whatever. You know, it's gonna be.
So just a quick question regarding response time, and how has that been? These are pretty many calls. I
Well, we
mean, I'm
didn't-
sure it's within our.
Yeah, we
range.
didn't put response times in here, but I mean, you know, based upon some of these locations with the engines in the district, yeah, it's right there. That's a different presentation.
I know, that's why I'm asking, because that's a lot of calls.
But that's gonna happen in August, we have to come back to you on
Yeah.
policy 1818, so.
Do you have anything else?
Yeah, one quick question regarding the captain's exam and promotion. What is the timeline for that? When is that gonna happen?
Well, I'll leave that to Chief Long is here.
It's Thursday, this week.
This Thursday?
Yeah,
Like
we have
2
assessment
days?
center set up Thursday, it's an all day event at USAR, and then that'll, you know, from that, they'll be scored, and then from there, they all go into the chief's interview, which is also part of the overall assessment, and then from there, chief will be selecting.
And so you'll be able to swear them in when, about?
Well, it depends on, you know, again, there's certain timelines and so forth within the next several months.
Okay.
Obviously, an internal promotional goes much quicker than like our, you know, firefighters, that takes much longer, so it should go fairly quick.
What company do we use, Chief? To do the
Talking about for
assessment?
simulation, Ken Hargis.
Ken Hargis. And we have 7 candidates going through.
Anybody else freezing?
I'm freezing.
Yeah.
Can we turn on the freezer?
I mean, I can hear Peter going like this, like I'm with you on that.
Did you hear my teeth chattering? When I was doing
We're all
it,
sitting up.
I'm kind of like leaning over here.
Thank you, John.
Peter, do you have anything?
No. I will make the comment, I think it's working much better to get your report up to the beginning of the agenda, and I appreciate the fact that you get it out ahead of time. Because the first most important responsibility we have is to make sure that the job's getting done, and this is the place where we find out, so thank you.
You're welcome. And next time for May, we'll have the follow-up to the questions that you asked at the meeting where John gave us fire prevention and language. So, yep.
Brad, do you have anything on the chief? No. All right. Okay, let's go to the consent agenda.
Move to approve?
Second.
I'd like to remove approval of the minutes, because I wasn't there and I can't vote on it. It's just a procedural point.
Okay.
And then I moved that it's been moved that we approve it, seconded.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
I move to approve the minutes then.
Second?
Any other discussion?
Just want to note for the record that Director Carpenter did provide, asked to amend the special minutes of April 11th to include the questions that were posed by the board at the special meeting. So the amended minutes are on your are on
So
the dais.
we've got two meetings, 2 minutes on item 1.
Yes.
We have to separate that into the approval of the March 15th meeting, and I was not present at that, so someone else is gonna have to.
Which was just done.
So we'll just divide the question, right?
You can do
So-
motions.
Right, so
Approval of just
approval of the minutes for March 15th, 2016.
Right, and there was a second.
No, there's to be a second now.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay, so,
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain?
And then
And
the
one
approval
abstention.
of the minutes of the special meeting as amended for April 11th, 2016. I'll
So,
move. Oh, I'll
second?
move.
Sorry, who was the second?
Peter, I was
Peter.
moved on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so then we'll go to the regular agenda. Item number 10, report on the implementation of the next study and impact.
Yeah, so you, directors, you have my report. The only thing that is different in the update from the 4 jurisdictions, the town, the cities, and the county, is that I've now been able to schedule a meeting with Assistant County Manager Mike Callaghy, which will be the first part of May, to discuss the implementation of the fees with the county. The update in regards to the town of Athens, the city of East Palo Alto, and the city of Menlo Park, nothing has changed there. There is one new item, however, that is new as of this evening, but John and I both were aware of this last week in terms of fire prevention. That is that the Gateway project, Mr. Bohannon's project, was submitted to the district today. To give you kind of a broader scope of what that means is, Mr. Bohannon, back about 5 years ago, with the city as kind of the first developer to go into M2 and propose a significant project. Within the development agreement, the city agreed to the district receiving $100,000 fees through the city. Relevant to this point is, obviously depending upon what we do tonight, what your action or direction will be, is that we would need to inform Mr. Bohannon and the Gateway folks of our decision to either accept those fees from the city or potentially change course based upon this discussion item. That's it. That's the only relevant kind of new information. I will say the 2 entities that we've dealt with to get us to where we are tonight from the development community, one was Facebook and the other one was the Bohannon folks, and they provided not only some legal assistance in terms of feedback from their legal team, but also a individual that helped work with John Hitchcock on the validity and kind of questions associated with the revised Nexus study report that you saw last time approved. So that's where we are.
If I can add to that report. Sure. Mr. President, members of the board. Just want to summarize where we are in this process. Maybe refresh your recollection of various things. Starting back in February of this year, February 16, 2016, at your regular meeting, you approved the resolution adopting the Emergency Services and Fire Protection Impact Fee Study. You approved a impact fee waiver and credit policy, and you directed staff, your legal staff and your administrative staff, to forward those studies and the reports to the cities of East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Atherton, and the county of San Mateo, and request their council and or board to adopt those fees. As you may recall from the discussions that you had previously with the consultant Seifel Associates and the reports that you've had from Mr. Kremen of our office, California law allows local jurisdictions that have land use authority to impose upon development projects an impact fee for the cost that that particular development will result in the district or the city incurring. We use terms like nexus study, we use terms like impact fees, we've used the term the Mitigation Fee Act. It may be confusing at some point in time, so I just wanted to clarify with you where we are. The district does not have land use authority. We do not approve zoning, rezoning, subdivisions. We don't have that authority in California law. We are a fire district, and our obligations under the law are strictly construed. However, we have the right to identify the impacts that new development will have on the facilities of the district. And we have the right to evaluate those impacts and propose to the jurisdictions that do have land use authority, which are the four that I mentioned, that they adopt on our behalf an impact fee that would be assessed on all new development when those developments come in for permits, that would provide to the district funds that would be used for capital facilities. We cannot assess impact fees for services, we can assess impact fees for capital facilities. So over the past year, you have done the studies required for this. The studies are required to be done in a particular manner. Your staff and your consultants have done everything that is legally required to have an adequate, legal, and defensible impact fee study prepared. That's been accomplished. Now, you have now transmitted those to the jurisdictions and asked them to adopt them. And that is a political action. Those jurisdictions have to decide, yes, we will adopt the fees on behalf of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District, or no, we won't, or alternatively, we want to change them. As the chief pointed out, he has provided each of the jurisdictions with the report. We have also reached out to the legal counsel for each one of those entities and offered to provide our analysis of why the fees are appropriate, why they're legally defensible. In response, we have met with two of the attorneys, one from Atherton, one from Menlo Park, and they have raised questions with us about various issues. We have done the legal work and we've provided them with an analysis that points out that their concerns are not well founded, that the issues that they have, that they've raised with us, we have resolved. You have seen copies of correspondence that we have sent out to Messrs. Connor and McClure, explaining the issues and hopefully satisfying their concern. To the extent that there are any other legal concerns, we will address those. So it is now, the staff and the legal team have now done everything that is required to get this matter before the jurisdiction to adopt. It is now, as I said, a political issue. But I do want to point out one thing that I think is very important. As the district has done with large developments that have come forward and have been approved by other jurisdictions, whether it's Menlo Park or any other place, we have negotiated with developers an impact fee that would cover what we thought at the time on an ad hoc basis would be the cost to the district of our capital facilities necessary to serve those developments. As I said, those have been ad hoc negotiations, ad hoc analysis for each development. You recall Facebook, and the chief just mentioned the Bohannon project. Now that you have adopted a fee, even though you do not control land use, you have a negotiating point with developers to come forward in the future. So that as of today, if a development is proposed on lands within the jurisdiction of the district, even though the land use is approved by another entity, you have the ability to go to that developer and say, we have identified the impacts of your project, the impact on our capital facilities is X, Y, and Z, and therefore we are asking you as a condition of development that you pay this fee. You still have the right to do that. It is an ad hoc negotiation that occurs at that time and place, and obviously you have the power to object to the development either politically or legally through the CEQA litigation process if they do not negotiate in good faith and come to a resolution of the impact fees to be paid by the district. So I just want to make it clear that even though we have done everything necessary to put the district in a position where you can ask the jurisdictions, and we have, to adopt these, even if they are not adopted, you still have a valid analysis that demonstrates the impacts of the district of all the new development that will occur within your jurisdiction, and you still have that ability to negotiate those terms and conditions. So everything has been done that is necessary to be done. It's obviously up to the jurisdictions to adopt these fees. We've identified all the legal issues, they've been taken care of. We've even offered to indemnify the cities and the county should they incur any costs or obligations or liabilities associated with implementing our fees on our behalf. So we've taken care of all those issues. It is now purely a political question for them to deal with and for the board members to deal with. I also want to make sure that we're clear on the terminology, because we will be talking in the next agenda item about assessments. Assessments are something totally different than impact fees. Impact fees are fees that are paid by developers upon the issuance of permits for the cost of obtaining the entitlements to do those developments. Assessments are another species of imposition by government that is assessed upon property for special benefits received. I'll discuss those when we get to that agenda item, but they're really, we have taxes in California, we all know what taxes are, we have fees, and we have special assessments. And that terminology has to be kept in mind when we're talking about this thing, because they are different. On the question of the Nexus study, the impact fees, are there any questions from the board as to where we are and where we're going?
Go ahead, Chair.
I have two questions. My extent of my knowledge is based on Mr. Kremen's memo, so, and obviously I don't have legal training or anything. But as I read this, and I raised this question when I wrote to you earlier, I guess maybe it's simply stated, when you say that the district does not have the ability to impose the development, the impact fee, and the issue here seems to revolve around this notion of police powers and so forth, is that a conservative view, or do you believe there's enough case law or law behind it? It seems to rest on an attorney general opinion and not on much law. So, and it seems like those two city manager or city attorneys seem to want to be arguing that we do have the right to impose an impact fee.
Well, that's a good question. The Mitigation Fee Act itself is confusing because it defines a local jurisdiction as cities and special districts. But special districts only have those powers that are enumerated in the statute. In other words, a city has more general powers. It has obviously a police power, but it has general powers that are derived from the Constitution and from the nature of cities. Whereas a special district is limited in the powers that it has. They're very specific and they're called out in the statute that creates fire protection districts. If you go to that statute, you will see no legal authority to regulate land use. And land use regulation is the origin of the powers to impose impact fees. So I don't believe it is a conservative opinion to say that the district does not have land use authority and therefore can't adopt these. It is a correct statement of the law at this point in time. Now, that could change, I suppose, in the future. The legislature could amend the law to allow special districts to have these powers, but they have considered that and have not approved that in the past.
So does that have to be expressly given to special agencies, or
Yes,
could
it
it be
does.
implicitly given?
No, it has to be expressly granted to you as a fire protection district. Special districts have very specific and limited powers.
And let me ask the second question, which is a follow-on to that.
Let me just add, sorry to interrupt, but I think, and this may be a political judgment, but it may be the desire of the cities and counties not to have to adopt this and hope that the district has the power to do it, but it's simply not the case. They have to adopt on our behalf, and we have had other districts that we've represented where we've gone through this procedure. We've actually prepared the ordinances for the cities. They have adopted those fees on behalf of the fire district.
So I would ask, since this letter just went out, I assume you haven't had a response from the two city attorneys yet?
Actually, there was one response already where the, I don't know if I have that. Yeah, there was a response on April 14th from Mr. Connors, who represents the town of Atherton. He said, thanks for the analysis and the offer to indemnify. If we're indeed challenged in any way, and then he adds another question that he has, which we will respond to. But so far, the response has been, they've appreciated the analysis and understand it.
So I just would ask you if through that back and forth, if there is any opening for us to impose it, that you would come back and
I
let
would
us know.
love to come up with a theory that would allow you to just adopt this on your own.
Now, the second thing is that I know school districts have the ability to impose impact fees, but I believe that's because the legislature gave them
That is
that
correct.
power
They
directly.
specifically gave them that power,
So-
although it's collected by the local city.
Could we, is there any reason we couldn't propose that the legislature carry a bill, one of our representatives, to allow special districts to do the same thing that the
No,
schools?
there's no reason you couldn't do that at all. It's perfectly reasonable. I believe the Special Districts Association may have already asked the legislature in the past to do that. But I can certainly find out from the Special Districts Association if they've had any luck with the legislature to
Well,
do
maybe we
that.
could even limit it so that we're not dealing with water and some of those things, we could deal with just fire districts.
Correct,
and-
correct.
yeah.
But yes, the legislature could easily fix this if they wanted to.
I guess I'm suggesting to our board is that this might be a faster and more effective way of dealing with the problem that we have than an assessment district. These things could go on in parallel, I'm not suggesting, but I'm just suggesting another alternative, and we have some very, important legislators, I think, locally here, and we have liaisons to them, and I think it would be something that we perhaps should talk to them about. And there aren't that many fire districts in the state, that, as opposed to.
Well, you can certainly find out if the Special Districts Association has asked that of the
I
legislature.
mean, most fire departments can get this done through the cities themselves.
Correct,
But
because
when it
they're
comes
part
to
of
a
the city.
fire district, why should we be treated differently? And I think it would be a strong argument for the legislature. So anyway, I would like to have us look into that. Is this something that we could, would it be a simple thing to write, or would this be a lengthy, that is conferring this power of imposing impact fees?
No, in my judgment, it would be quite simple, because all you'd have to do is modify the Mitigation Fee Act so to make it explicit that these can be imposed by fire protection districts.
Just add that one clause?
Absolutely.
Well, I perhaps, yeah, I would like, I'm not one of the liaisons for the county, but I would like one of them.
I would suggest, if I may, Jack, that we ask staff to, with the help of council, to prepare a resolution for us to sign, to consider at a future meeting, asking that this be done, and that resolution then be the vehicle, by which we communicate with special districts and legislatures, et cetera.
That was the extent of my question, thank you.
Okay, we'll take that as direction from
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because if you don't try it, then we know it's a no, right?
No, I think that Director Bernstein's analogy is correct. A fire department that's part of the city can adopt a fee through the city council, but a fire district that provides the same services cannot. It's an anomaly.
Okay, Deputy Shep? Are there any other discussion? Okay. Item 11. Report regarding formation of assessment district and engagement of outside consultant. So the other parallel track that the board has adopted to ensure that the district is fully capitalized for growth and development within its jurisdiction in the future is to consider what's called a special assessment district. You had a presentation to you back in January of this year that identified taxes, fees, and assessments that can be imposed by the district or on behalf of the district that would provide the capital and the ongoing revenues to fund the district above and beyond its current property tax base for those costs incurred through future development within its jurisdiction. One of those options was a special assessment district. A special assessment district is a legal entity that is created by a public agency that imposes assessments on real property for special values that are created by certain public improvement. Special assessment districts have been around in California since the turn of the century, the turn of the last century actually, 1900. And typically a special assessment is something on the nature of building a street, or building a sewer, or building a water line that will
especially benefit a piece of property, and that property then pays a special assessment for the benefits of having that public facility present. The reason I point that out is that it's often confusing when we talk about services of a general nature as to what is specific and special of a service as opposed to what is general in nature. The fire service you provide right now to all the residents within the district is a general service. You provide fire prevention, suppression, emergency response services to all properties within the jurisdiction of Menlo Park Fire Protection District, and that is a general service you provide. To impose a special assessment, you have to come up with an analysis that shows that there is special benefit that attaches to certain properties by virtue of the services that are provided above and beyond those general services. That is the nature of the presentation that was made to you before. And if you recall that presentation back in January, we identified that there have been a number of legal issues that have arisen about these sorts of things. But nonetheless, there is an inherent power to have special assessments for specialized fire suppression services. Back in February, you directed staff to proceed with the next steps. And we've identified what those steps are. And this report is to give you our analysis and update and ask for direction on those steps. One of the issues to deal with, first of all, is to find what's called an assessment engineer. An assessment engineer is a consulting engineer that is hired by the district to provide an analysis of the boundaries of a special assessment district, the nature and extent of the facilities to be included within that special assessment, and the manner in which that special assessment will be spread among various properties. We have contacted 3 qualified engineers on your behalf. We have an exemplar of a scope of services for those engineers, should you wish to proceed, and they have given us their qualifications to do this sort of work for the district. We haven't asked for a price, but it's my estimate that the price will be in excess of the amount of signature authority of the chief, and therefore we need your direction to approve a contract. What we will do, if you give us direction to proceed, is to prepare a legal services or a special engineering services contract and a budget, negotiated price, bring that back to you for approval of a consultant price and budget amendment for that at your next regular meeting. I estimate, however, the cost of that special assessment engineer is going to be close to $100,000. Now, those costs will be incurred on a serial basis. In other words, there'll be an initial analysis for a certain price, further work for additional price. You could probably stop it at any point in time and not have the obligation in its entirety. So, as I said, we have scope of services. We will do a budget. We will bring the contract back for your approval. The engineer will be directed to come up with boundaries, facilities, recommended assessment method, and all other issues relative to creation of a special assessment district. It is my understanding, and I think I need clarification on this, that it's your intention to tailor this special assessment district to deal primarily with the larger parcels of land on the west side of 101 that are likely to develop in the near future. In other words, this is an assessment district that you would impose upon areas to be developed or redeveloped for the next 10, 20 years, and not the remainder of the district that is built out with single-family residential. At least that's my understanding of how you wish to proceed. If that's not correct, I need to know that.
Did you mention west side or?
I'm sorry, east side.
Thank you.
East side, yes, I'm sorry, east side.
No, that's good. I was, and you didn't think I was listening. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think that's my report.
So do you want a motion or just direction to staff?
I do.
Can I ask a question? So I'm just curious,
I'm just trying to understand whether we're going to be,
just says to accept the report, but we
well,
did direct.
I just want to clarify with Steve. He said, you know, this is what he wanted. Do you want that in the form of a motion, or do you want that in terms of direction to staff?
I think I'd like that in the form of a motion,
Okay, got it.
because
Okay, yeah, that's-
we'll be incurring some costs.
I would like to make that motion.
And I'll second that, but I do
Okay,
have a question.
now we can go on.
Okay, now we'll do,
Let me just
now
clarify
we'll do
what the
discussion.
motion is.
Yeah,
The motion would be to authorize us to negotiate a scope of services and a budget with a qualified special assessment engineer,
well, based on these 3 recommendations.
Yes.
These 3.
to bring that back to you for your approval at the next regular meeting. to proceed, and to also provide the direction that I described earlier in terms of boundaries, equipment facilities, assessment methodology, and those sorts of things to the engineer, in concert, obviously, with the chief and his staff. Again, that will all come back to you in that scope of services.
Okay, I mean, so mine's along the lines of these three assessment engineers. How did you determine that these three would be the best qualified to work with this fire district?
We'll give you our recommendation about which one's going to be the best qualified, based on.
No,
did you
how
find
did you
those
come,
three?
because there are others, I don't know how.
Those three were recommended by people that have worked with fire districts and other similar districts in the past that we know through our firm who've been vetted and recommended.
Okay. So there's, they deal
I
with fire districts.
I personally spoke with each of them on the phone personally and
Okay.
went through the resume and made sure that they were qualified for this district.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
Yeah, council has frequently reminded me that the role of this body is that we are a political body, and it's our responsibility to deal with other political bodies and et cetera. And the reason why I am very supportive of this is that, reflecting back on the last report that we just got about the impact fees, et cetera, in the best of all possible worlds, were we a fire department within a city, et cetera, those things would move forward to the city council, they would be approved, and we could get on with the job. It is my personal political judgment that the city of Menlo Park will never agree to share with the fire district one penny. When we were in discussions with Gateway at the time that development was being proposed, the city attorney specifically said to us, look, there's only so much money and we're taking it. You don't get any. If you want money, you're gonna have to go get it on your own. And I think that part of the feedback we've gotten from the 4 jurisdictions that have to approve this is that nobody wants to do it first. They always want to wait for somebody else to do it, and they want to be assured that the other 3 parties are going to do it. So Menlo Park, in its own inimitable fashion, will sit there and do nothing, I predict. And one of the reasons I want us to move forward on this alternate path is that I think it is a clear message to the city of Menlo Park, look, you have a choice. You can either adopt the fee schedule that the fire districts put in front of you and be part of the solution, or the fire district is going to go off and do its own thing, and if it goes in that direction, you, the city of Menlo Park, have absolutely zero to say about it. It's going to be decided entirely by the property owners based on assessed value. The big property owners get more votes than the little property owners, and the city of Menlo Park doesn't get a vote. So that's why I am, and this is a public session, and I'm perfectly comfortable going on record as to why I want to pursue this parallel strategy, because I think it is the only tool that we have to get the attention of the city of Menlo Park, and perhaps to get them to approve the impact fees that we've asked them to approve.
I wanted to ask about the nature of the assessment district. Does it have to be a contiguous geographical area? Or could it be, for example, properties with buildings over 3 stories?
No, it doesn't have to be contiguous, and the art, and I want to stress this because you asked earlier whether my opinion about impact fees was conservative. I want to stress that the advice we're giving you as to the formation of an assessment district is cutting edge. There haven't been too many of these, so we are pushing the envelope, and we're going to do this in a way that we think is legally defensible. But as we pointed out in the January presentation, there are certain issues. So back to your question, yes, we can tailor this on building size, we can tailor it on geographic area, we can tailor it on a number of different conditions. It doesn't have to be a contiguous area. What the key is finding the nature of that special benefit that attaches to the property that justifies the special assessment in the first place. And that could be a number of things depending upon what we can work out with the.
So it could be a factor like height or density
Exactly,
or something like
exactly.
that.
Exactly right.
That would be worked out between the assessment engineers and the chief and the
The
staff.
key is the assessment engineers and the staff and the nature and extent of the fire services and facilities that are gonna be required for what is essentially a significant change from the single-family suburban development pattern that's occurred in the last 50 years to what is now emerging as a significantly more intense, higher density, multi-story environment in which you're providing fire services.
We own a property in the Hacienda Business Park, and the assessment district was formed when that park was being built. At the time, it was the largest office park in California. And there, the property owners voted to tax themselves because we were building infrastructure that benefited everybody. I'm talking about flood control, roads. We even paid for the interchanges on Interstate 580. And all that was going to benefit the park and so forth. Here we'd have to find a way that these property owners would feel that they were getting a special benefit to entice them to vote for it, because, well, I'm not questioning Peter's assessment of Menlo Park's likelihood of voting on this. To get developers to vote to tax themselves is no easy task either, and that's what would need to happen, right? And the developers would have to say that we're getting such a benefit from this that it's worth it for us to pay that money.
Yeah, and just to be clear, they, in the special assessment district, they don't vote in favor of it, but they have a protest provision. So it's not technically I'm voting for it, it's a question of they're protesting against it. But you're right, essentially, it's the same calculus. You have to demonstrate that there is benefit attaching to their receipt of these special services.
Thank you.
And I think the chief has done just an incredible amount of spade work with these developers, all of whom I think the chief would report are supportive of making contributions. They're not, they haven't hauled out a bag of money and handed it to you, but they said, we understand that what we're proposing to do is going to have a big impact on you, and there probably ought to be some mechanism in place for us to make a contribution to that.
I wouldn't say all of them, but I'd say some of the bigger
Yeah,
developers.
I don't want to overstate it, but thank
Right,
you.
but I mean, at the same time, we worked hard with that community, right, to make sure
So-
that, I
Well,
mean, this has been going on for
yeah,
years, and
you're
so,
in the March meeting where we had the issues regarding how we generate property tax, the TRAs, all the tax rate areas, all those different things that have come up, including discussing with the developers what the district's reserves are used for, how they're used. It's been a real journey in terms of educating them because of the misinformation that they all have received about how wealthy the district is, how much money the district has, how much money the district could use within the reserves to do the very things that we're proposing, which is a misnomer. And, even the tax rate, as you know, was well overstated, at the 16% of the 1%, that's completely a falsehood. So, we've been dealing with a lot of misinformation first, and then getting to what's reasonable second, which right now, I wouldn't say it's for this process, but it's been primarily about the impact fees.
right, but what I'm saying is, this could be an additional, I guess, funding mechanism, where they would have to put out more money, essentially. And I mean, if they're being assessed on top of the impact fee, on top of their property taxes, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't do this, but I'm just glad that.
No, on top of the impact fee, no.
What?
This is not on top of an
No,
impact
for
fee.
the development.
These are, I think to clarify.
Okay, then I'm getting something mixed up here for the
We're
developer.
proceeding on parallel tracks here.
Correct.
Okay,
Actually,
well, okay,
There's
then I
three tracks we're proceeding.
I misunderstood,
No, that's
sorry.
all right, it's very complicated. We're proceeding on the track that A, the impact fees will be adopted by the jurisdictions
Right.
that we've requested, and that those those impact fees will indeed fund a large portion of the cost of capital development in the future.
Yes, and
It's on the
that's,
impact nexus fee, okay. Second track,
and that will wait, and that's also in relation to the ad hoc negotiations we've had with.
well, that's the second track.
Okay,
The second
okay.
track is that we, even though the jurisdictions haven't adopted these
Right.
formally, we still have the ad hoc, the ability to, on an ad hoc basis, negotiate with developers, regardless of the size of the project, the impacts of new development based upon the adopted fees that you have that are not legally imposed by the land use jurisdictions, but have been adopted by this board as a matter of policy, that has significance, and has been analyzed and is, it doesn't have to be renegotiated. In other words, we have an economic analysis that those fees are grounded in. And we can go to developers and say, for the cost of doing business, for our approval of your EIR, we want these fees paid. The third track, if we're not confident of number one or number two, the third track is the assessment district procedure.
Okay.
Now, it may well be that you do the analysis, and miracles do happen, and all 4 jurisdictions adopt the impact fees, and you decide not to proceed with the assessment district.
Okay, got it,
Yeah.
See, and,
okay, so I thought tracks 1 and 2 were kind of,
Well, they're related.
well,
yeah,
they are related.
Yeah.
And they're also related in respect to my political judgment. Remember that if, for an EIR, there's a lead agency.
yeah,
The lead agency for every project in Menlo Park is, ta-da, the city of Menlo Park. The city of Menlo Park can in fact, if we say, hey, we think that we are on an impact fee, they could say, yeah, thank you very much, and ignore it. And the only thing we could do at that point is we would be able, the only way we could stop it, we'd have to sue. They do not, they have to accept our comments in terms of, yes, thank you for giving us your comments, but they don't have to act on our comments.
right, so this is the alternative to that, so.
And
One of the alternatives,
clarifying
yeah.
point in there for track 2. So just know, based upon the discussion, because this goes to action and what we're gonna do.
Right,
As I mentioned, you have a developer that we work with on impact fees that has submitted. So based upon the February action of the board, as council stated, we're gonna move forward with that an impact fee is in place, albeit that it isn't adopted by the jurisdictions yet. But based upon the authority and the due diligence of the staff and the vendors and everyone else that we've worked with, it's legal. And so at this point, that's what we're gonna tell the developer, that is the expectation, is that they will pay the fee based upon the impact fee formula.
so
But that developer's already gone past the EIR stage.
right, so what
Yeah,
I'm
so-
saying is that
Correct.
if the jurisdiction, let's say the jurisdiction adopts this, theirs is still in track, the developer's impact fee payments would still be independent of the jurisdictions adopting it, does that make sense?
No, no.
Okay, well, so, okay, I am totally misunderstanding something here. So I get, we're moving ahead with track 2 with some of these,
Correct.
Yeah.
2 with some of these developers, right? With our ad hoc negotiations. So
Yes.
in this process, that could actually get done before any of the impact fees are approved by the other
That's true.
jurisdiction.
Yes?
So, but let's say if the jurisdictions approve that after these other negotiations have been finalized, what happens with the developers? They don't,
Well,
do
let
they
me give you an
pay
example.
double, or
If-
not double, but
If we negotiate right now with developer X,
right?
who, in the city of East Palo Alto,
Yeah.
who hasn't adopted the fee,
Yeah.
and we say, our impact fees are the following, based upon what you've adopted.
Yep.
And they say, fine, we'll pay that. And then the city of East Palo Alto adopts our impact fee, it's the same fee.
Okay,
They only pay once.
okay, got it, okay. I wasn't, that's, okay,
Okay.
now I understand,
Yeah.
got it, okay. I just want to make sure they're not paying,
They're not gonna pay twice.
I got, okay. Thank you. I know,
So
I'm sorry
February,
for all these questions.
your action in
I just-
February was the trigger for track 2.
Yes, yes.
And this discussion, subsequent discussion with legal.
I got it, okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
and the weakness of track 2 is it depends on willing participants.
No, I know, but I'm just trying to get
And so
clarity.
if everybody's
between-
willing, track 2 is great. If
Right.
somebody's not willing, track 2 doesn't work very well.
Yeah, so, but I just wanted clarity on this, okay, thank you.
Rex?
I don't know why I was so confused.
I just had one question. When we talk about the assessment district, and we say we need to set boundaries, if you have can somebody opt out of that? Can you have one group over here that has taken the Nexus study or the option 2 that you have dealt with and exclude them from that boundary?
Well, it's a technical question, but you can have zones. You can have different zones within an assessment district that assess property at different values. And I think that if we're adopting an assessment district, we get all the way down the road and we're ready to go to majority protest and adopt assessment district, we're gonna have to decide whether or not we're gonna use the assessment district as a vehicle to get revenue for the district, or we're gonna use impact fees at that point in time.
Can we credit in the assessment district?
Yes,
Can
there's
we
a way.
credit people?
We could
And
have
that
a
was-
credit.
Who already
That was my
paid
next
fees?
question, was the credits.
Right.
And a building that
Yeah.
was torn down, he gets credit for that.
You're getting into the weeds.
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
let's
that's for
just
assessment
get the-
engineers to give you
Let's
some-
get the
No, for
assessment
example,
engineer
let's just take
study
Gateway.
first.
You know, my vision of this is it's all of the M2 area in East
Yeah.
Menlo Park, and it's the sort of parallel area in East Palo Alto, which would include Gateway. And I would suspect, and Constance, correct me if I'm wrong, that if we go all the way down the road with this, we can put a clause in process. However, anybody in this assessment district who already paid fees would have a credit applied based on the fees that they paid.
Then
Theoretically, yes.
I had one other question.
Yes.
You said they have the
I mean,
ability,
the overall goal here is to be equitable.
Yes.
To spread the cost of new development in an equitable way on all new development that's causing that, incurring that cost.
you mentioned appeal. If somebody says, okay, X says, I'm willing to go ahead and pay that, and Y says, no, I'm not, I want to appeal it. What is the appeal process?
When you form a special assessment district, there's what's called majority protest. And if you have a majority protest, then you have to terminate the proceedings. If you don't have majority protest, then the analysis of the number of votes in the protest can depend upon the way the assessment spread. This is a technical thing that the engineers will explain to you. But if the process is not terminated by a majority protest, then the imposition is there, whether you like it or not. It's like taxes.
Okay?
You can't opt out. Now, you could have a mechanism where you pay the impact fee to opt out of it, but that's, again, much of the details that go into the engineer's report and analysis.
And so just to be clear, the majority protest has to be of the majority of those that would be assessed.
Correct. It's not the voters.
Right, not, right, I just,
It's
you know,
based on
making
land
that
ownership.
clear. Right.
Chuck?
I had two questions. I want to follow up on something Bob mentioned earlier. He was talking about charges for services or charges for certain kinds of services. Are we authorized to do something like that? Let's say, I mean, could we have a charge for more than 10 calls per year?
No, there's what's called the fireman's rule in California law for years, and basically you can't charge for a general governmental service. Now, there might be ways around that, but there might be ways to deal with that. For example, if you have excessive alarm calls, then there's ways of dealing with that. You can impose charges on excessive calls. But for these types of services that we're talking about, I don't know that a service fee is going to get you the capital necessary to construct the improvements that you need to provide for development. So I don't know that that would work.
Okay, I was just looking for other tracks to see if there were more. And then I have a quick question for the chief. Did Mr. Bohannon agreed to pay a certain amount of money for a study and so forth
He
at
did.
one point? And then it was time for it to be paid? Was that ever paid?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Bohannon agreed to $25,000, his contribution towards the Nexus study. He did pay that through the city. The city said, well, he paid the city. It took a little while, but we got the money out of the city. So again, that's kind of a fine point too, because under his development agreement, as I mentioned, there's another payment now that would be due, but based upon, again, your action on the Nexus study in February, we're moving forward on that track versus the development agreement, because at the time of submittal, the February resolution by the board for the impact fees is in place.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion?
So you have a motion. You get a motion
Vote.
second.
Yeah, we
We have
have.
a motion
Right.
by Peter and I second.
Okay,
Okay, sorry, can I just, sure, a real quick one. I would just like to direct the staff.
No, you can't,
Well,
Chuck.
I think this idea of being able to stop, should we find out that this is just not very feasible for us, I think we shouldn't have to spend $100,000.
No, I understand that. and
This is not approving the money. This is approving,
I'll-
coming back to us with a contract.
With a report.
Well, I'm
We
just
have
trying to have this as part of the contract, that's all.
I will structure the contract so that there are milestones, and we do that for anything. And I also just want to point out that because the analysis of the boundaries of the facilities and the special benefit is complex, you know, it's my hope, and we will endeavor to bring this back to you for next meeting. But I don't want to make an absolute commitment that we can get a scope of service negotiated in that period of time, given your agenda preparation. So there's a possibility it might lag until June, but we will do everything in our power to get back to you in the hanging meeting. Okay.
Sorry about that. Thank
No,
you.
no, that's fine. All right, so we're gonna call, I'll call the question. Okay. So, the motion is, to go forward.
I think Michelle has the
Oh,
motion.
Michelle, you wanna do the motion? Read the motion.
Not verbatim. Was the motion to authorize legal staff to draft a contract with scope of services budget with assessment engineers to include the boundaries, the assessment district, and I'm missing another thing.
I think that's it.
Is that pretty much it?
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Boundaries and services, I think, of the district.
Is it service?
Boundaries, equipment, or facilities.
Yeah, so what we could
Service.
legitimately charge for,
Right, okay.
Oh, right.
so not just the area, you gotta have something you gotta charge for as well.
Okay, we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? 5-0. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of work.
Thanks,
you, Steph.
Steve. That
What,
was-
years of work.
And thanks for clarifying.
We're not done. We're not done.
We're not done.
We're not done. Okay.
Okay.
All right, now we're on item 12, report of status of the fire station number 2 as of March 31st. Are we still having the open house? Chief?
Yes, sir,
There you
Director.
go.
So, you know, John
That's a good
has
thing.
obviously submitted the report per the request that we do this monthly. You know, even from when the report was submitted to today, there's been more progress made. You know, the doors are going in on the Runnymede side, which is great. They're doing the floors. I mean, basically, we're handling the punch list under the belief, again, that next week, on the 28th, we'll have the open house, because that's what's gonna happen, and the 30th will be the public open house on a Saturday. And then a lot of the approvals will need to be done by the city, by the vendors, by the state, before we can actually truly open the station. So things like the state has to issue a certificate for the elevator, they need to test the pipes and all kinds of different things to make sure, you know, everything's good. So that will take a little bit more time past when we do the opening and the public walkthroughs are available. But actually, it's good in one way because the crews aren't necessarily in there, and there's just more room for the public to walk around without a bunch of personal items being in there, or fire apparatus or what have you, so.
Great. Are there, yes, questions?
So have we,
Oh, appreciate it.
Harold, have y'all sent out invitations to the appropriate parties?
Yes, we have, in fact, we
Because I have, some
have
people haven't gotten
50.
them. I was just in Palo Alto for the Cooley Landing opening, and I just talked to the mayor, and she has not
She
seen it.
RSVP'd.
She did, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, she may have looked for it, okay.
Yeah, she.
And the
Same
press, have they
So
been
media will be
notified?
done Thursday, a week before, so this Thursday it'll come
Okay.
on.
Great, thanks.
And then again right before.
Go ahead, Jeff.
One of the things that is as important as the station is some of the equipment that's gonna be assigned to it.
Right.
Are you going to be releasing that also, and will the press know about the truck and those kinds of things?
So we've actually had, you know, had some discussions with other board members, but for all of your benefit, we did discuss, I think at one point, more of having these meetings on both the east side, whether it's East Palo Alto or East Menlo, about what the district's plans are. And, you know, who knows, maybe some of that discussion with your fellow, as Mr. Myers put it, fellow political folks would spur them to maybe agree to the impact fees and things like that, just because we're giving them enhanced services out there, which the timing is certainly up to you when we do that. to some degree. So, you know, I think we need to do presentations out there on the, you know, Director Ryanson and I just discussed that today. On the east side to say where we're going. We've traditionally not been included on the Connect memo. East Palo Alto doesn't necessarily have this information, and the city of Menlo Park doesn't include it either. And really never even comes up with the Facebook project or any of these things. So we haven't done, since we're not part of the city, since we're not part of the process per se, of like the Connect memo, we need to do our own, my belief is we need to do our own presentations out there of where we're going and what's coming. And who knows, maybe some of these other issues that we're discussing here get surfaced there as well, because I think the community would be interested to hear probably part of that as well.
But let me just add, I think it would be a good, it doesn't have to be as part of the opening, but in addition to the opening, I think the commitment to the east side is important. I think we should do it at some public place. It would be a good idea maybe to have some sort of town meeting at some point, with maybe outside the fire station, behind the fire station or whatever, where people could hear about some of these things. I think it would help the city of East Palo Alto recruit volunteers for the efforts that they're making. So I don't know exactly the right way to do it, but I think it's an important thing for people to hear. And I would bet I've not said anything because I didn't know how public or not public those plans were. But I think that I think the city of East Palo Alto would be very proud to learn that they're gonna get a truck stationed out there and so forth. And I think it would be important for the residents to know
Sure.
about that.
So would the residents of Bellhaven, right? And the owners in NAM too.
Exactly.
Now, you were probably purposely vague. Do you have an occupancy
On which
date?
point?
An occupancy date for Station 2?
So the goal right now, still in the plan, I think listed in there is May. It isn't, there's no date yet, because again, going through all the sign-offs with the city and everything else, that's the plan. I mean, again, as these things, as we start to finish all the pieces up, then, you know, we could try and assign a date to it. Then that also includes having to move everything over to the station, flipping all the switches on the station alerting system, making sure the radio communications, all that's working, so.
Well,
There's a lot
the
of
reason I
pieces.
ask is the board meeting's on the 17th.
Correct.
One possibility would be to have the board meeting there if you've not yet put the units in place.
That's a good idea.
We could do that.
Can we take us?
The
Hour
only,
to go
the
across
only
town,
issue at
but-
Station 2 is parking. Because
Go
literally,
across.
if you drive up and down the streets in East Palo Alto, because so many people are living out there, there's very little space for parking. Which is a challenge.
It's not a
Get there early.
decision we need to make here. It's, I would leave it to you and board president, but I think it's an option for us to think
Sure.
about.
I think it's a great option, if we can do it.
Yeah. Again, the only challenge we're gonna have, and we realize this for the dedication as well, is gonna be the parking issue out there.
Or driving there.
Well.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
We're
We
gonna
drive
have to
all the
leave-
time.
we're gonna have to
Driving either
leave an
east or
hour
west.
early just to go
Yeah.
4 miles.
There's a public building across the street, isn't there?
Well, 2415 University is the city hall.
Yeah, it just seemed like maybe we ought to, in the invitation, request people to park there and walk across.
It's down a little ways.
It's about 4 blocks. Yeah, about 4 blocks.
It also has its own parking issues.
Exactly.
Just the FYI, so logistics wise for May 17th is we do have a public hearing scheduled for weed abatement. And so if we are to have the meeting at EPA, I do have noticing requirements with the legal newspaper, so that's probably another, something to think about, maybe
Wrinkle.
not May, but June. So just a
Okay.
FYI right there, so.
Do we have any other discussion items on Station 2?
Separate report.
Okay. Report. Do you need a motion?
No, we're just
No.
accepting.
We accept it.
It's
Thank
okay.
you. Thank you, Chief. Staff.
You're welcome.
Item 13, accept the status of Fire Station 6 project as of March 30th.
So there is a new issue as of today. I don't think it's not a bad thing, but it has to get, it goes to the study session we did with the board on deployment. When the station was designed to hold the largest pieces of equipment in the drive-through bay, which could be a truck. The station was never designed to have a truck and an engine combination. It was designed for a battalion and a truck, or an engine in that station. So it's something smaller than a truck fits in the main bay. One of the options that we still have before we submit, but it would result in a slight delay, so there's a decision that has to go in here, it doesn't have to be tonight, is that we found out with the city that most people don't use this 8-foot lot separation line that the city has down there. And John met with the city today, and they would be willing to grant, at least at staff level, additional space forward for that station so we could accommodate an engine. So meaning that in the backup bay, currently have 2 feet to 3 feet for that engine to fit in there. And when we looked at this, we looked at maybe a reserve piece that's not going in and out of there. So to have a second piece of equipment at Station 6, we discussed if we wanted to move the front of the station out anywhere from 3 to 5 feet, we would see if the city would move the line for us. The city has said they are willing to do that, but there would be design delays. So it's an option. It's just something I wanted to inform you of. We're still trying to find out all the details, but going back to deployment to give us the maximum benefit for that station, that's one option.
Well, certainly, since it's a, this is a long-term investment, my inclination would be to do that.
Absolutely, yeah.
But remember, it is the city of Menlo Park, so there would be planning delays, right? Because you have to submit it to the city, you have to wait for the approvals to come back.
Is it ministerial, or would does it have to go through the planning commission?
It would probably have to go to the council. So I don't know if it goes to the commission because they've already looked at it. That's again, John just told me this today. I can certainly find out, between now and the next meeting and let you know.
Yeah, that would be great.
I mean, ideally, it's my opinion, you want to maximize as much as you can. That they even are thinking that this would be allowable is a good thing.
Yeah.
So that's some movement on their side that we haven't seen before.
With the Station 2 blueprint, with the added additional space for the truck, would it be all right to actually still put that there, on there? With the extra
on 6
3 to 5
or-
feet? For 6 to use the blueprint for 2.
Yeah, so completely different. The only thing on 6 that would need to happen is you kick the front out by 3 to 5 feet.
All right, fine. Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to make it any more complicated for the city of Menlo Park.
So
Right.
one would be a drive-through,
Yeah.
and the other would be a vacuum?
What's that? One would be a drive-through, one would be a vacuum.
Okay.
Yes, Peter.
Cistern.
Yes. No comment, no interest, no feedback from the city.
So it's out of the project.
Yeah, so to give the rest of the directors an understanding, we had put a water cistern in there to store water in case downtown had a fire. The city had looked at Station 6 for a well. They wanted 1,000 square feet on that lot for a building, for a wellhead. There's not 1,000 square feet. If I could get 1,000 square feet, we would have built a bigger firehouse. But the reality is that we said, maybe we'll put a cistern in here. We proceeded with that. The city is not interested in paying for us to store water, from what I'm gathering. They haven't really responded. So we're gonna basically just take it out of the drawings. It's about a $400,000 expense for the district.
And I raised concerns with the chief in the conversation we had, because I think that it's a very slippery slope if we start going down the road of doing something that's the responsibility of the city. And the city's responsible for providing water. And the minute we go into the water storage business, where do we stop?
Right.
The vulnerability that the city has chosen to go to wells versus storage. So the vulnerability of wells, especially for an earthquake, is power goes out, backup power,
But haven't they
something
done the
breaks, and a well may always work when you have a.
Or isn't it the wells on the drawing board or something?
There are wells on the drawing board for emergency. So again, in an earthquake, if the ground shifts, well may not work.
Okay.
So, there's, the alternative the city's choosing to look at is not necessarily a
Good for
foolproof when,
You know, the way to do it is what Palo just did with El Camino Park. They took that whole park opposite Stanford Business Shopping Center, they put in a huge underground storage area at great expense, and then put the park back on top. And Menlo Park's trying to do it on the cheap.
That sucker field.
I mean, I just, you know, I know so many people who, after the Loma Prieta earthquake, you know, their wells, they're history. It wasn't that they just didn't work. It was, you know, those wells were not even salvageable.
we prefer to see storage.
But it's not our responsibility to do storage.
Correct, that's right.
And one of the things you talked about is that one of the ways that we can still fill the gap is we have tenders and things like that that we can potentially move around. Tender doesn't hold that much water, but it does hold some water. One of the issues that we raised at the special meeting on prevention is, you know, what are we gonna do about downtown in terms of sprinkling? You know, we have fire traps sitting down there, and the rate of rebuilding is so slow that we're gonna be looking at those buildings that have open attics, no sprinklers for a long, long time. And you get a fire down there, and the water supply sucks.
Yeah, the downtown, so the downtown specific plan gave them, well, gave the legacy, you know, Prop 13 owners an incentive if they choose to take it, whether they choose to do that or not because the floor area ratio increases. That's a business decision on their
Yep.
part. The reality is, to your point, half the buildings in downtown do not have sprinklers in them. There's an issue in the parking areas all behind, there's no water supply to the parking areas. You know, years ago, if John was here, he could tell you that, you know, the city didn't like the look of the FDCs on Santa Cruz Avenue, the fire department connections, so they were moved to the back, but the problem with the back is there's no water supply. So, yeah, so there's, you know, there's a lot of conflicting issues, even if you drive down and look at the hydrants, you'll find 3 different types on different blocks, they're not spaced out necessarily all the same way, so, yeah, downtown has a lot of issues that hopefully will get resolved, but currently, yeah, it would be a challenge in a major event. It's been a challenge in the fires that we've had there to keep it contained to the structure of origin based upon the type of structure that's on fire and where the fire is.
Well, we did touch on that at the meeting, and the minutes indicate that that was one of the questions that's asked, and you've indicated we're gonna get feedback at that at the next meeting, so,
Hope so.
okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to say, I second what Peter said about this is a long-term project. I think we ought to make whatever provisions we can for a full complement of equipment. And it's a benefit for the city itself too, and the property owners downtown.
Well, that's why John posed the question, but he was a little nervous, just so you know. So next time you see him, be nice to him, because, you know, I sent him in there asking the question, and the reality was he wasn't sure what the reaction was gonna be. Because again, there is some delay, but to your point, it's a 60-year project when it's built, so.
Well, if the delay becomes excessive, we just proceed with what we've got.
Yeah, and we will find out more information about the timelines and everything else.
All right. So,
Just accept the report.
Accept?
Rex, you good? Okay, we'll accept the report. Thank you, Chief, staff.
You won't?
Thank you.
All right, next we'll go to reports and requests. Item 14, President's Report. Well, I attended the Easter egg hunt on March 26th. Silver Dragon on April 14th. Thank you and your staff and all the CERT volunteers. Things went really well. Jack, you did a really good job there, registered everybody.
Thank you.
And the incident commander was
Well,
extraordinary.
it's true, the incident
And
commander.
I liked your report,
And-
Peter.
And the breakfast was nice. The coffee was a little hard, but everything worked out real well. And on the 15th, I met with Ray Mueller and Don Horsley over at Cafe on the Sharon Heights side. And I met someone from the Transportation Commission, which I had forwarded you her email, where she's would like to do a presentation on the bicycle issue with the current projects that are in Menlo Park. So I forward you the email, and we can talk about that, of how to coordinate that with Michelle, to have them do their presentation as they did with the city council. And then we'll be able here to discuss the alternatives and what staff's recommendation would be.
So one word of caution on that. So the bicycle commission's been going around trying to get endorsements, obviously. Specifically on, yes, but yeah, you think, specifically on Oak Grove. We've told them, we're fine with the route between MA High School, up Oak Grove to El Camino. The part that they've never responded to yet is the 51 parking spaces that get lost if they go from El Camino up to University Avenue. So going up into downtown Menlo Park, you know, I just give you a word of caution. That's a big change up there, and you're going to lose a lot of parking. So I'm not sure that's anything we want to get involved with. The schools, I absolutely get it. The other thing we've told them too is, but you know, it's a Menlo Park issue, is then you need to shut Ravenswood down because that's a dangerous route, especially as you get above Laurel. There's no indication they're going to do it. And as I wrote, especially with the channel as you saw that we get there for crossing because of the railroad incident that we had with the woman that was hit by the train, you can paint a bicycle symbol on the street. That doesn't make it smart or safe. It seems to be lost. There's no criteria for 2-lane roadways, 35-mile-an-hour roadways. You know, painting symbols on streets is, to me, it's kind of dangerous, actually. You know, so I said, can you put bicycle symbols with a slash through them, meaning don't ride your bike here because it's dangerous to do that. Of course, nobody wants to do that. But so anyway, the bicycle folks, you know, we're good between Middlefield and El Camino because again, it benefits the school. It's when it gets into downtown that it gets very political, specifically because of the parking issues. So.
Well,
I don't know if we want to touch that, so I just warn you, because I know what they're
Well,
shooting for.
well, I understand, you know, the political issues, but, you know, they're residents of our fire district. If they want to do a presentation more than,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
But they want an
Just-
endorsement, right?
well,
Well, we can still
Doesn't
do
mean you
the
have to do it.
presentation, we don't
That's
have to
right.
endorse, or not
right,
take
I
any
mean,
position.
you know, I would like to be, you know, to see their point of view too. And I'm sure everyone else on the board would, so.
The other thing, if John was here, he would tell you they're also pushing, this is the council as well, you may have heard this, I know we've heard it in the meetings, is the 10 to 9 foot on the road widths. Ladder trucks 10 foot, mirror to mirror. 9 foot isn't working for us too well. So, you know, again, I'm not sure how many times we gotta tell this council how big the trucks are, but, you know, they don't shrink. So, the problem is driving a 10-foot piece of equipment mirror to mirror down a 9-foot roadway is gonna end up with a bad day.
Yeah, I've heard your comment on that. I'm also hope that people appreciate that driving a 10-foot truck down a 10-foot lane is not easy.
Let's thread the needle.
You know, that doesn't, there's not much margin for error. There's none.
Well, those are very good discussion points, either after or during the presentation.
Yes, well, it'll be in a letter form because obviously they're pushing now to make it happen through the council. And not that it's bad, but there's certain things we need to make sure get addressed too.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, reports and requests from directors. We'll start with Chuck.
Yes, I'm not sure how this item differs from liaison reports. Are liaison reports supposed to be just the formal things, or is that what we're talking about a city?
If you want to combine them, you may.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Don't make it too formal.
That's right. If you'd like to combine them
In
both,
the interest of time.
I,
because you were at Silver Dragon, so we can combine that too.
oh, if we're talking about those things, yeah, I participated as a foot soldier in Silver Dragon. And, I also was at the Cooley Landing grand opening, which was actually quite an amazing event. I mean, it was, unfortunately, it was an hour and a half in the, hour and 20 minutes in the sun. But it was, East Palo Alto was really taking a lot of pride in itself. They're calling themselves a city on the move, and you have the feeling that the city is moving and things are getting better and so forth. And a lot of pride out there, a lot of people, I mean, a Palo Alto council member and a couple of people from our district were there. Virginia was there, and I don't know if Rex, I know they had your name tag, I don't know if you made it or not. But that, one of the other things, I was very pleased, I've been pleased, I sent a note to the chief and also to Chief Stevens about the fire district's participation in East Palo Alto, which I think has improved greatly. There's been a lot of contact, not a lot, but there's been contact with people there. CERT is trying to build itself up and is doing a good job. One of the things that happened was the Kavanaugh neighborhood had a block party and so forth, and they ended up inviting the fire district, and the fire district was supportive of them, and it turned out to be kind of safety oriented as well as community oriented, and that's now probably going to be a model for some other things. I'm hoping that the fire district can participate in Cinco de Mayo, which is coming up
On May 1st.
in May, and then the Juneteenth celebration comes up after that. And these are all different communities out there, but I think the fire district, people are feeling that the fire district is representing them a little bit more than they have in the past, and all of that is very positive. So I commend the district for doing that. I have been participating in their CERT meetings out there. They are getting organized to do that. I know that the communications person is making a proposal to the district for a very innovative idea for a communications center where they're trying to, right now communications on the whole don't work for volunteers. To have good communications, you need some kind of tool, and right now all the volunteers have our FRS radios, low power, without a license, then maybe they go a block, maybe two, but that's it. So he's developed this way of having these regional communications center where there's a licensed amateur radio operator who is the interface between FRS and ham. They're making use of, they're very happy with the new antenna on Station 2 and making use of that. And so they developed this little box that has both a FRS radio in it, it has a ham or amateur radio in it, it has a controller which is monitoring the status, battery on standby, it can go a month or so without in active use a couple hours, in which case it needs recharging. It's really a very clever thing, and I think it could be a model for other CERT territories. Because again, the communications almost always fail. Every time we've done Silver Dragons, they just don't work. And anyway, I'm real proud of what they're doing, but I'm real pleased with what the fire district is doing now, because I think the fire district is reaching out, making an effort. Chief Stevens has done an excellent job of reaching out to the community, and I'd like to see that continue.
Did you hear the California report did a thing on Cooley Landing?
Yes, I
heard,
did, it was
and
great.
I heard several of them, a couple of them were John Johnson, but I heard
Yeah.
at 7:02 or something, Peter Carpenter was interviewed.
For Cooley Lake, there's a.
Very inarticulate, unfortunately. No, it was actually, both representatives did a very good job. We got credit for the entire county, so somehow they were saying,
Thank you, Peter.
the leadership in Menlo Park, we're talking about, how many volunteers did they say? Something like 4,000 volunteers, or some huge number.
But that's only fair, because the county handout for the Silver Dragon exercise mentioned every agency involved except the fire district.
That's right.
Oh my
And I was the one, I found it and gave it to the team.
That was,
Yeah.
So you scooped them anyway.
Right, so anyway, we got credit for 4,000 volunteers, I think.
on NPR, right? Okay.
No, I heard it on KCBS.
Okay, well, on the radio.
I think I heard it on, yeah.
Yeah.
And Robert Jones had prepared for their request for the $10,000. And we forwarded to you, Chief, for your staff to go through their request, and then Chief.
It's gonna go back
Stevens
through
said,
the
"Okay."
CERT advisory committee first.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. So, yeah, we're going forward, and it was great that, you know, it's always been, when I met with Ruben Hollow, the one of the council members, I said, well, you need to tell us what they need, and then pass it through the chief staff and then through the advisory board. And the next meeting, we get the request and the breakdown of the items and the items that they wanted and they needed. So it's always good to have those requests so you know what they want, rather than trying to walk through the forest. So that's the,
That concludes my report.
okay, and then we have Virginia.
So I went to the Easter egg hunt and I thought it was very well attended. The kids loved it, the parents loved it. The firefighters did a great job serving, constantly serving. There were a lot of people there and it was a beautiful day. And I think that brought out a lot. And that was just in Menlo Park. So I understand there was one in Easter egg hunt in Holbrook Park too, which was.
And then there was one in Suburban Park.
Yeah,
They're
well,
they're
I
all
think
over.
at Onetta, Harris, anyway, there were several, but I'm glad that we were able to accommodate all of them, so let them know that we're very thankful for that. I also attended the Cooley Landing opening in East Palo Alto, which was very, very well attended. Congresswoman Jackie Spear, who now represents East Palo Alto, was there and made some remarks, as did Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, who used to represent East Palo Alto. So they were great, and Senator Jerry Hill and Assemblymember Rich Gordon and even Warren Slocum made some remarks. And I think our fire district was very well represented. Chuck and I were there. We missed Rex, but maybe you were there, Rex. I didn't see you, so sorry. But John Johnston was there, and Councilwoman Lisa Gaucher, who's acting as the MC, made a point of recognizing the fire district and the collaboration that we've had with East Palo Alto. And, over the years, this has been a long-term project, I would say like 13 years or so.
Oh, yeah.
At least. And
And
so,
two big fires.
yeah, so they were very grateful and appreciative and acknowledged John and the fire district in their remarks. So I wanted you to know that they're glad that we're there. And the people I spoke with afterwards are very excited about the opening of Station 2, which is why I'm asking about, did these notices or whatever go out?
We've sent them out.
I know, because some people haven't gotten them, maybe they just haven't checked their emails, but at least when I talked to them, they were on notice to check their emails, so that's good. And that's all I've got. I'm sorry I missed Silver Dragon though, I had another thing to do, but I understand it was wonderful.
Well, I will just briefly comment. I was privileged to be involved in Silver Dragon, and one of the things that's happened over the years is that we have intentionally chosen the people to run it later and later and later so they have less time to prepare. Because in the real world, you're not going to have any time to prepare. And so I didn't get much notice that I was going to be the incident commander, but I got great support from Tom and Jack and Chuck and everybody who was there. I also had the opportunity to spend about a half hour with City Manager East Palo Alto. And it was very, we were operating and he was there with me underneath the awning and watching what was going on. And we were talking about things like all the properties that they've got that don't produce property taxes, and I was amazed that what a tremendous amount of the city of East Palo Alto is not on the property tax rolls, because it's in churches, it's in exempt low-income housing and things like that that don't generate any revenue for the city. And obviously they don't generate revenue for us, but we have compensations in terms of the rest of the district. But he could not have been more positive and supportive about the relationship between the city and the district. And so that was a great opportunity to meet people from other jurisdictions.
You didn't say
And that's all I got.
that.
Thank you, Peter. Rex?
Thanks to everybody that participated in CERT, and it was good. I guess that pretty much covers it. Maybe we'll get down to the emergency prep.
Yeah.
We'll do that next.
Okay.
Basically, today, we had a meeting earlier today, is that we looked at the CERT. It's basically their bylaws, and they seem to be pretty much in order. We've asked that they be sent on to legal counsel to make sure that everything is good, and look it over just to make sure we didn't miss anything. And I think those will probably be implemented. Chief Stevens will send that on. Was it?
Thank you, Rex. Finance Committee?
Just a quick question about that. Are they changing the bylaws because their mission is changing? Is that what you're referring to?
No, they just went through and made them a little more formal.
Okay. So they're not becoming an independent, more independent in some ways? I thought that was afoot at some point.
Well, they are independent.
Well, originally, are you talking about CERT or are you talking about the advisory board?
Sure.
Okay.
And then part of it is that the bylaws kind of spell out what their advisory board is and what the CERT roles are.
Well, originally, the CERT advisory board was simply advisory to the chief, appointed by the chief, and they were only advisory to the chief. They really had no management responsibility for CERT. I guess
No,
I'm trying to find out. is
if
that-
you look at them, it spells out how what the advisory board does, who's on it, a little bit about them. And there's also another part is that their SOPs, how they go about doing their business. What equipment belongs to their district, what equipment doesn't belong to them, what happens if they disband, those kind of things. So it's cleaned it up.
And the other thing that's happened, and I have not looked at this carefully over, but 5 or 6 years ago, we had a set of draft bylaws that were, I think, sort of terrifying. Because they basically were a real command and control document that, talk about discipline and being discharged and,
A lot of that stuff is gone.
yeah, and it was very impressive, and I was pleased to see that the whole tone of the document has changed significantly.
No, they did a good job. They basically put it together themselves.
Yeah, which I think is great, because it's working with
That's
their
what it should be.
organic process.
Could
Chuck, did you get a copy of this?
I didn't get a copy of it, so.
Did you?
No, it was in the
It
packet.
was in the
I was in the
emergency
packet.
prep packet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should have a copy.
Yeah, it's in there.
I see.
Yep.
I-
And it's still in, actually a draft.
Okay,
Yeah.
You should have a copy of that.
right.
Okay.
But you'll be getting a copy of that.
No, this was for the meeting today. I didn't,
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't realize, okay.
Okay,
So
great.
we went through and there was some concerns that came up about some language. And it's kind of, they're gonna go back and take a look at that and probably clean up what we discussed today. And then probably send that on to legal to make sure that we've got the bases covered. One of the words was district, is that they talk about districts. And that usually implies a fiduciary responsibility, when maybe the word should be leader or something like that. So those kind of things that they're gonna take a look at. But for the most part, it's a pretty well-written document. It spells out their powers and their lack of powers, or what the district's responsibility is to them and what their responsibility is to the district. So it's very well written, and thank you for the people that worked on it.
Yeah.
Good, nice job.
Really nice.
I would just make a comment and had some discussions with the chief about this. We've got 3 sort of interesting moving parts here. The first moving part is just individual citizens trying to take care of themselves and their family. The second is the organized entity called CERT, and the third is the professional firefighters and emergency responders. And Tom and I, for example, spend a lot of our time focusing in on the Atherton Disaster Assistance and Preparedness Team. And we've come, and I'm not speaking now as a fire board member, but as a member of ADAP, we've come to the conclusion that it's important that ADAP be organized in a way that we are, in fact, self-activating. That when something happens, we start doing our thing, and we do it as private citizens without cloak of authority or anything else. But what we need to, and again, conversations with the chief on this, is we need to figure out a system so that when the professionals then say, okay, fine, you know, we're gonna move to the next stage, we can make a transition from being ADAPT and individuals to being people who are part of an activated CERT organization. And then the next and the third, perhaps most challenging piece is that in the CERT world is almost always held its exercises somewhat independently from the fire department. The fire professionals, to their great credit, spend a lot of time training, a lot of time in exercises. And when they respond to an event, they don't have a whole lot of time to try to sort of figure out, you know, how to deal with the civilians. And so my suggestion to the chief is that next year's CERT exercise be much more natural, in that the first part of the exercise being sort of the citizens doing the best they can. In the second part of the exercise, we now bring in the professionals and we say, okay, now this person is the local incident commander, and you're no longer working with this remote person, you're now working with either the police car or the fire engine that shows up, and you not only need to learn how to work with them, but they need to learn how to work with you. And that's not going to be an easy task.
Next year, we'll see how it works.
Yeah.
Finance Committee, Peter, chairs that committee.
We had a good short meeting, and we agreed on everything, and it's in the minutes.
Yeah, he's doing a fabulous job.
There you go. Okay,
Stepping
down to
right back
liaison.
into reality, yeah.
Yeah. What? Is there an update on the recruiting part?
For the,
Firefighter?
for the accountant, we've done phone interviews at this point. We have probably 5 to 8 good candidates, and anticipate doing probably the interviews on the beginning of May or second week of May.
So by June, would there be somebody in place? What, probably?
Probably more like middle of June.
Thank you.
So now we're going to liaison reports. I think, have we all covered what we need to do with liaisons? Public comment number 3. It appears we don't have any public comment. Do I have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
All right. Hopefully we can stay here rather than go back to the building.
You can stay here.